So our next presenter, again, I've had the privilege of presenting with, this is the first time introducing, is Dr. Beth Haynes, who's the Executive Director of the Benjamin Rush Institute. It is a nonprofit educational organization. She was previously in private practice with board certification in both family medicine and emergency medicine, and has worked in full-time healthcare policy for the past 5 years and made multiple trips across the country and to Washington that I'm familiar with. As a senior policy analyst and board director for Doctors for Patient Care, she's also a founder and board member of the Joseph Warren Institute, which is a parent organization of Doc Squad, which trains volunteer physicians to write and speak about healthcare policy. Dr. Haynes?
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Haynes, and after 20 years practicing emergency room medicine, I am now the Executive Director of the Benjamin Rush Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that works with medical school students to help them enhance their exposure to health policy education and medical ethics, economics, issues like that. And today I'm going to talk to you about engaging our future colleagues and the need for balanced debate. Tremendous changes are going on in the practice of medicine, as you're very well aware of. And yet, students are not learning adequate amounts about what those policy changes are and the effects that it's going to have on their ability to practice medicine the way that they may have gone into medicine hoping to be able to do. If you look at the literature that's out in our professional journals, there's not a lot, but what is out there shows that health policy education on medical school campuses currently is inadequate, and that's in spite of the fact that students and faculty both want to have more health policy as part of the official curriculum. And what little education on health policy is occurring is extremely unbalanced and tends to favor a very government-centric ideology. So let's take a look at that in more detail. I put together a slide that you can use to refer to some of the better studies that are done. And you can see that people have been concerned about the lack of healthcare policy for quite a while. In more detail, let's take a look at one survey from 2011 of 93 medical school deans. And although 94% of these deans said that they did teach some form of health policy education, almost 60% felt that it was too little. And if you look at what the 4-year average of how much a formal education there is, it's only 14 hours. That's spread out through 4 years of medical school. It's not a lot of health policy, particularly given what a profound effect it's having on the practice of medicine these days. And only 30% of schools have some type of health policy department or institute that's associated with their universities. Now, why is it not being taught? Turns out that it's not really due to lack of financial resources or lack of interest on the part of the faculty or the students, but the primary reason is curricular inflexibility, which to me is saying that it just hasn't been made enough of a priority yet for it to be able to get to sort of take over some of the space that's currently being used by really important areas of medical training in the basic sciences and clinical experiences. Some studies done that look at what medical students themselves think about the adequacy or inadequacy of health policy
education. One of those is an exit survey that's done by the American Association of Medical Colleges. And this is done with graduating medical students. And in 2011, 12, and 13, the survey asked about the students' impressions on whether or not they received adequate instruction on health policy, on law and medicine, healthcare systems, and medical economics. And significant portions of the students felt that their training in this was inadequate. Unfortunately, their 2014 survey does not actually address these issues, which is a shame because I think we need to continue to be aware of how the medical students feel that their education is going on health policy. And in 2002, 770 medical students
split pretty evenly between first-year students and fourth-year students, were asked about a series of questions about health policy education. Almost all of them felt that understanding health policy was very important to practicing medicine. And over half were dissatisfied with the amount of education that they received, and showing almost 90 wanted to have more exposure to healthcare policy instructions. Well, I mentioned about the imbalance of health policy education. I'm going to need to put my glasses on to read the small print here. But here's a couple of quotes from medical students in the Benjamin Rush Institute and leaders, and what they have to say about the instruction that they're receiving. Very rarely in our curriculum, says one student, do we get presented with ideas about the free market. So often, our curriculum makes us think anything free market means you're going to leave people out on the street without health care. And as a presenter on healthcare and free market's role in the provision of medical care, I have literally been accused of wanting to see people die in the streets. So this equation of free markets and lack of caring is very strong on medical school campuses. Another student stated, we're constantly exposed to academic medicine, all of its advantages and politics, but no one ever discusses what it's like on the other side. Liberal academics like to take the moral high ground and treat conservatives as if they're racist, evil, or simply apathetic. At a school which claims to prioritize diversity, I feel almost villainized for my beliefs. And this is something that we hear quite a bit. Somebody with ideas that are outside of the majority thinking on medical school campuses don't just feel like their ideas are disagreed with, but they're having a hard time being able to speak up because of their character and even the intent of why they're holding their ideas is suspect. And I don't hear this just from medical students. There's medical faculty that are fear to be able to speak out about their more free market ideas, or even advocating for less government involvement in medicine. I've had extensive conversations with some faculty, one at California institution, who felt like her contract would be at jeopardy if she spoke out on her political views. And then even a tenured professor in the Chicago area was afraid to speak out because he feared consequences for his NIH funding. So this is the kind of atmosphere that we have. It's not one of open inquiry on many of the campuses that we have. And a third student stated, half my education here is intense sciences and the other half is advocating for national healthcare systems, raising the minimum wage, income redistribution, and a variety of other public health policies. So this is just a smattering of some of the quotes and statements that I received from students and a few of the stories about faculties that I've talked with that demonstrate we do not have balanced, open discussion about healthcare policy on our campuses. And what this has led to is that students then overwhelmingly support the ACA. Here's a couple of medical surveys of medical students that were performed in 2011, 2012. Each of these surveys was about 1,000 to 1,200 medical students. The first one found that 80% of the medical students supported the ACA, even though just about half of them weren't sure if quality would actually improve under the ACA. In another survey, 47% supported the ACA, and 40% said they really just didn't even understand it. So we have this large group of people that say they support the ACA, and yet really there's not been adequate education about what's going on. So I want to look a little bit more about the imbalance of the health policy education that is occurring on our medical school campuses. We're going to look at there's many instances of what is considered a fact and being taught as a fact in the health policy instruction, primarily because it's what they're hearing in the mainstream media, and it's being repeated over and over again, without really using our clinical scientific detective skills to make sure that the entire broad spectrum is being looked at. So here's one example. Something that we hear all the time is that Americans spend over twice as much per capita on healthcare as the average developed country. And as you can see from this graph, we do spend more, and we tend to spend significantly more. But that's just one way of looking at the data. Another analysis shows that when you look at the per capita GDP of the various countries, and you subtract from that the healthcare spending, what you end up with is the residual amount of income that per capita that people of that country have to spend on non-healthcare matters. And when you look at it that way, because Americans earn more per capita, there's more prosperity in America, we actually end up with more discretionary income, or more income outside of healthcare. So this is just another way of looking at, yes, we spend more, but we also have more available to us. And if you have more discretionary income, what are you going to spend it on? It's likely that you're going to spend it on something that's as valuable as healthcare. Another place where people are not learning the full spectrum of critiques of statements, one of that is the World Health Report 2000, where the United States was ranked 37th in the world in terms of quality of medical care. What's interesting, and you almost never hear, is that Philip Musgrove, who is the editor-in-chief of the report, in 2003 published in The Lancet an extremely harsh critically harsh report about the World Health Organization report. Sorry about my stumbling there. Look at what some of the statements he made, that the attainment values in the report are spurious. They're based on imputations and thus meaningless. That the report is of no use for judging how well health systems perform. And in fact, that the publication of these numbers was unethical. These are really strong statements critiquing the report, stating that the United States was 37th. And yet, how often do you hear that? It's not what we hear either in the media or in our educational systems. So it turns out only 39% of the indicator values represented real data. And the rest of it was calculated from things like what is income and other areas that are associated with healthcare, but not the actual healthcare data itself. And yet this is what is treated as gospel. Mark Peterson, head of health for the OECD, also is very critical of the World Health Organization report. He described it as a very notorious ranking, stating that health analysts don't like to talk about it in polite company. It's one of those things we wish would go away. And part of the problem, another criticism of the World Health Organization report, is that although it touts itself as measuring the quality of healthcare systems, only about 25% is actually aimed at healthcare quality. But even within that 25%, the two main indicators that they're using, infant mortality and life expectancy, have some problems as indicators of how well a healthcare system is functioning. Most of the report is actually used to measure what is called fairness or distribution. So it's heavily biased towards systems that have universal healthcare systems, because that's what they're looking for. So it's not quality that's being measured, but equality. In fact, if you take out the measurement of cost and the effect that the price of healthcare has, the more that we spend, that the United States spends on it, even keeping all the rest of the factors completely the same, the United States goes from 37th to 15th. So there's a lot of factors that are going into coming up with that 37th number. But let's look at some of the specifics of how they're measuring healthcare quality. As I mentioned, some of these indicators themselves are suspect. Let's look at infant mortality. This is the United States has been shown to measure lower than many of the other industrialized countries on its infant mortality statistics. But what's going on here? Even though the World Health Organization has a specific definition of infant mortality, that's not the statistics that are being collected by various countries. There's a wide variety of international standards for recording live births. Some countries don't record a birth as live unless it weighs more than 500 grams and even up to 1,000 grams. Some don't record it as a live birth unless the length exceeds 25 or 35 centimeters, or unless it's a greater than 22 to 28 weeks gestation. And perhaps the most amazing fact is that some aren't recorded as live births unless they survive past the first 24 hours.
So all of these things are being counted as infant mortality and compared to the United States, which measures absolutely every birth as a live birth if there's a heartbeat, any kind of movement, or if there's an attempt for breathing. So we have much more rigorous standards on what we measure for an infant as a live birth. There was a study in Philadelphia that showed infant mortality is overstated by 40% in the United States due to non-viable births being recorded as live. So again, this is a statistic that's being used to condemn the United States and say that we have low quality healthcare in spite of our higher costs. But even this is suspect. And another measure of healthcare system quality is often the life expectancy. And if you look at the OECD ranking, the United States comes up about 19th. That's 75.3 years. However, if you take out what you might say are things that are outside the realm of healthcare systems to actually affect traumatic deaths due to homicide, suicide, and accidents like motor vehicle accidents, the United States actually comes up ranking first. Now, this is one critique of the use of life expectancy and as it's measured by the OECD. There's a critique of the critique. And all of that back and forth are things that should be explained and gone into great depth when teaching healthcare policy. But why isn't it? Well, part of the problem is that there is definitely an ideological prevalence towards the values of greater government involvement and being skeptical of free markets that's present amongst the faculty in our institutions of higher learning. So let's look at a survey that was done of the political party affiliation based on voter registration in California. And as you can see here, 46% of the tenured faculty are registered to vote Democrat. That's quite a bit of a majority, or not a majority, but a preponderance. And if you break it down by departments and areas of study, in the humanities, in our undergraduates, you'll find that for each Republican faculty, there are 10 that are registered as Democrats. Moving it into the hard sciences, it's not quite as imbalanced, but it continues to be 7, 6, and even in medicine, nursing, and health, it's as much as 5 to 1. Now, can somebody who has a particular political ideology or bent teach things in a way that is balanced? Of course they can. But when you look at what's coming out and the political leanings of the students and their belief and faith in the ACA, even though they don't understand it, it makes you wonder if that indeed is happening. So health policy in U.S. medical schools, it's inadequate and it's desired, and we're seeing that being expressed by both students and faculty. And given what I've just shown you, it's not balanced. It's not balanced in the information that's being presented to the American people, and it's not being looked at with as much at the closeness and the scientific criticisms are not being evaluated on both sides in medical schools either. So what are students looking for? Surprisingly, what they want is really good stuff. Again, I'm going to have to put on my glasses.
And then here are a couple of quotes. So I've really enjoyed attending lunch talks of the Benjamin Rush Institute. Although I've tended to disagree with the arguments of the speakers, they've always been thought-provoking. I have appreciated that the speakers invite disagreements and debate, because that exchange of ideas will eventually lead to solutions. Another student, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but this, meaning a conference put on by the Benjamin Rush Institute, was probably the most beneficial discussion on healthcare politics I've had in school so far, and I'm in the health policy emphasis track. A third student, describing a debate. Everyone at the debate, whether pro or con, stated that this was one of the best debates they ever attended, and they appreciated the chance to hear this topic, which of course is never discussed in medical schools. That particular debate was talking about social justice, the ethics of social justice, and how this has a negative effect on a physician-patient relationship, and the ability of the physician to remain as the prime advocate of the patient. Describing, and then my next one is describing the reaction to Dr. Keith Smith of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, a ambulatory care center that is cash-based. Dr. Keith Smith gave a very provocative lecture that challenged the way a lot of people in attendance have been taught about the true cost of providing health care. Some people still had concerns about the viability of the model in providing access to the poorest of the poor. But overall, people seemed genuinely surprised at just how well the model worked, not only for physicians, but more importantly, for the patients. Well, if you look at some of these quotes, and then also looking at what I'm hearing from the medical students as I interact them, here's what they're really looking for. Students want solid data, and they want balanced analysis. They want to hear points of view and critiques from all sides of the issue. And they want debate, but it needs to be courteous and well-informed. And more importantly, they're really looking for positive solutions. And some of the positive solutions that Benjamin Rush Institute is presenting to them are things like the direct pay primary care model, cash-based hospitals and surgery centers like the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. Students are hungry for evidence and examples of medical innovations and looking at what kind of systems really help medical innovation flourish the most. They're also very concerned that whatever system we put into place pays adequate attention to our most disadvantaged citizens. These are the kinds of things that students are looking for. These are the health policy issues that they want to learn more about. So Benjamin Rush Institute is providing this, and because our whole purpose for existing is to promote health policy solutions that protect the doctor-patient relationship, preserve professional integrity, and restore medical freedom for all Americans. And we accomplish this by sponsoring programs that champion the doctor-patient relationship. And we want to equip all physicians, both aspiring and currently practicing, to be able to be ambassadors for healthcare policies and medical practices that preserve freedom and promote quality. So I wanted to show you a little bit of some of the programs that we have. Sort of our flagship type of event are debates, where we really work hard to bring in policy experts, physicians with a special interest and therefore expertise in areas of ethics or policy, and really pit the best against the best. And it's through these informed debates, really challenging each other on the details of the issues, is where we're going to learn how to put together solutions that are acceptable to everybody and truly work. To give you an idea of some of the topics that we're presenting to the students in our debates, having the free market advocates debate against single payer or against the ACA, and people also supporting the ACA. Looking at, is healthcare a right? What are the ethical arguments for and against that? Do we need to reform our current reform, and if so, in what direction? What about that independent payment advisory board? Is that a good idea? Is that the best way to control Medicare costs? What are we going to do about malpractice reform? We had a great event with 4 different points of view on how to improve malpractice, how we handle malpractice in the United States. There's a huge controversy going on currently about maintenance of certification, and we had a debate on that. How should physicians be paid? Should it be fee-for-service? Should it be through the ACOs or some sort of retainer? What is the best way? How do we come up with what's the best way? We also provide lunch speakers and on a wide variety of topics. And here are some of the topics that we've covered. Physician-industry relations, which relates to some of the conflict of interest statements. What is the right way for medical students and for physicians to interact with drug reps, industry, device manufacturers? How are we going to get innovation if we sever the relationship between physicians and industry? Profits in medicine, good idea, bad idea? Let's take a look at it. What is the history of government in medicine? People have said that we've had a free market in medicine and it's failed. But if you look at the very detail of how much governments have been involved in medicine, as far back as the Civil War, it's surprising that we have had we've had a lot of government and it's increasing. What about physicians as entrepreneurs? What's their role? What can we do to encourage that? Clinical guidelines. There's some negative effects on those. They're not all good. Price transparency. Why doesn't it exist? How do we achieve it? What are some free market alternatives to the ACA? What's the best way to improve healthcare quality? So these are the issues that students want to hear about and that BRI is helping while we still don't have enough of healthcare policy education on our student campuses. So our goal, our ultimate vision is to create a world of affordable, quality healthcare in an age of accelerating medical innovation and excellence. We're not going to do that until we have informed, balanced debate and have our future colleagues truly understand simple economics and what the effects are, both positive and negative, of the healthcare policies that are being implemented in our current age. So it's an important topic. We're seeing people realize that more needs to be done. And as we still are having this imbalance and not enough health policy education, Benjamin Rush Institute will do its best to fill it in. If you're interested in helping us, take a look at what we've got on our website. If you would like to be a speaker, if you have a topic that you think that needs to be covered, we'd love to hear from you. So at the summit, where it's going to bring together people of a wide variety of points of view, this should be celebrated. We're all on the side of the patients and our ability to practice medicine according to our own judgment as best as possible. And let's look for areas that we can converge and understand each other in places where we still disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes, for an excellent presentation.
You're welcome.
We definitely appreciate you spending time here, being with us, as well as educating everybody on what the Benjamin Rush Institute is all about. One of the issues that has come up is that physicians are very well trained, but it seems like they're becoming technicians more than critical thinkers or having analysis skills. So what are your thoughts about how to get physicians to, in training, think critically and to take action on things that are important rather than just following guidelines or those kinds of things that pop out of the EHR?
Well, I think that's a great question. In fact, I think physicians have a really unique way of approaching problems that will actually keep us some of the better solution factories, I think, in medicine. Fortunately, we still think in terms of systems, and we think about our patients as a whole system, and that's something that's really been driven into us as physicians and healers, that even if you have the best chemotherapeutic agent in the world and it absolutely wipes out the cancer, if at the same time It also wipes out the bone marrow, destroys brain cells, and makes you a cardiac cripple. When you look at the whole system, that chemotherapeutic agent may not really have done you service. And we need to take those exact same skills about thinking about the whole system to looking at healthcare policy. So we're in the trenches. We can see both the advantages and disadvantages of every intervention that is occurring, but we need to remember to step back and not just look at what's obvious in front of our face, what are some of the successes that the policies create, but also really train ourselves to keep that broader view. So it's part of being that clinician scientist, not just about patients and medicine, but also about healthcare policy.
Well, it's like the story of the surgical case where the surgeon comes out and he said, the surgery was a complete success, we accomplished our objective, but unfortunately the patient died. And that's, an issue, certainly. So you have to think in terms of the whole system, and to be able to think critically and to be able to learn from mistakes and to move forward with solutions. And that's important. Humility is a big part of that as well. So at the Benjamin Rush Institute, I know you take on all of the hard challenges. You had mentioned maintenance of certification, which is an incredible issue right now where physicians feel totally overburdened and unable to perform patient care, as well as jump through all the hoops that the government and their governing organizations want to go through. In fact, we had a previous speaker earlier this week from Newsweek who had actually written a world-class article on it. What is your thought on for example, ideas for physicians to stand up and to take action? Because in history, physicians have always been active with patients, but passive with leadership and the intervention of other entities into medicine.
Oh gosh, I think some of the things that we're seeing out there and that this conference is highlighting are really fabulous examples of leadership, and looking for places where, even within an intense regulatory environment that we're working in, where can you continue to offer value to patients, and then making sure that isn't going to be taken away from us, that the obstacles are not put in that place. So looking for, just within your own practice, where can you create value for each of your patients? Medical care isn't about populations. It's about a doctor and a patient solving a problem, using the family as part of what's going on, using the community if you need to, but it's really looking at that individual problem and then coming up with solutions. And that solution may not be on a protocol. The things that today's best advantages in the technology were unthought of before. So if you're only sticking with that protocol, you're not going to come up with the really unique solutions. So I think not being afraid to go back to that tradition of what I really like to call the clinician scientist, somebody who is highly, highly trained, uses their individual judgment to the problem that's put in front of them, and create that solution. There's a great story about a physician in Oregon and there's a TED Talk on it, I don't recall her name unfortunately, but she decided, I'm going to hold a medical town hall. I'm going to ask the people in my community, what do they want from me as a physician? What kind of practice do they want? What's the best way to meet their needs? And I think having those kind of conversations within our practices, within our communities, are places that we can have tremendous leadership and come up with these positive solutions.
Certainly. That was a very moving TED Talk, and that was Dr. Pamela Weibel, spelled W-I-B-L-E. Absolutely. And she has come forward with solutions that were tailored to her patients. She asked her patients, what kind of practice should I have? What do you need from me? Instead of answering to insurance companies, government, and other outside sources for information. So at Benjamin Rush, what data gathering are you doing, like before and after surgeries, surveys on students' attitudes and knowledge? Because when you enter med school with certain preconceived notions, you get into it, and we kind of looked at ours as like a black box. No light gets in or out, and we used to say a bad day on the outside is better than a good day on the inside, because it was you know, it felt like a factory. What are your thoughts on the surveys that you've done with regard to students and then becoming interns, residents, and attendings?
Well, so the only surveys that are out there currently are the ones that I'm aware of, are the ones that I mentioned in the talk that were done in 2011 and 2012. And I'm currently working with an intern to come up with a proposal, and you have to get a grant and so forth, to be able to try and take that survey and say, where are we now that we've been involved with the ACA? What are students thinking more? So it's one of the things that we have in progress, but we haven't done any surveys yet. Really, the main thing that we're doing is trying to bring together people of different points of view so that we can all learn from each other, look at what we have in common, where can we move forward, but you can't do that unless you're really looking at the issue from all different sides. And that's the tragedy of much of the education that's going on, is it's really not including that a really robust back and forth, really critical thinking about the policies, their positive and negative effects.
Right, so that's important to make, to help the system make full physicians that can think and act on their feet and act independently of guidelines if no guidelines exist or if the guidelines just don't fit. Certainly you have to be able to think and act on your feet. But to change the topic a little bit, the Physicians Foundation did a survey in 2014 that 6.5% of physicians were in DPC or direct primary care practice, 13% were exploring it, but 27% of the youngest physicians said that they were exploring the model. What is your experience with the model that medical students say they want to work with? Or don't they even have exposure to alternatives?
A lot of it's just not even knowing exposures. In fact, when we do bring in people that are speaking about direct pay primary care, or they meet Keith Smith and hear about what he's doing with the surgery center, they're blown away. They have no idea that these kinds of alternatives are out there. What's so exciting about working with the medical students is they're bright, they're enthusiastic, they are still optimistic, they want to put their energy in there, and their minds are open. Their minds are open, and they're so tech savvy that they're going to come up with these solutions. And I mean, it's exciting what they're thinking, but they're still not being shown the breadth of even what's out there. So the more that we can expose them, instead of having them sort of break the walls down of some of the boxes and have them even thinking outside of the box even more, and using all that energy will be fabulous to see what kind of solutions will be generated from that.
Have you ever heard something really unique from a medical student that, as a physician, clinician, health policy researcher, have you ever heard something from a student that was just so far afield you say, my gosh, why didn't I think of that? That seems so straightforward to me. Did they ever just knock you off your feet with something?
Not as a new idea, but the recognition that they're not gaining informed consent on healthcare policy, that because of the lack of the balance that is in our current curricula that are going on, they feel like we're missing informed consent about healthcare policy and the healthcare issues. And so, like I said, they're really hungry for that.
So it's sort of a top-down sort of thing, where, in my view, healthcare is bottom-up. It comes from the patients to the nurses and the staff and the physicians and up through the healthcare system, rather than somebody at the top saying, you know what, we don't have enough money for total knees, so we're going to have to cut back. And
yeah, I don't think that quite was getting at what I'm talking about. Just again, the fact that there's really not an open discussion that's going on. These are our future colleagues. They're my future doctors, right?
Sure. And sure, as we age gracefully.
So it's really important that we make sure that they're getting the best, and politics is just ingrained in medicine. As much as we may want it not to be, it absolutely is, and policy has huge effects on it, and we need to make sure that they're well informed and that information is fully balanced.
You know, from my growing up, I just wanted to be a physician. I always wanted to help people and make my living working for people, with people, by people, about people. And you get into it, and then you find out, okay, well, you're going to work over here, you're going to do this all day long, and then if you produce enough, then you're going to get your paycheck. And it's like, wait a second, I thought I was going to work for the people, by the people, with the people.
And some of the critical thinking is really looking at, we've got a lot of these regulations that are there, and most of them are created by people who feel like we're doing this to protect the patients, we're doing this to assure quality, and then forgetting to take the step of, well, is this also causing further problems? Are we really achieving our goals?
Well, how do you measure quality?
Well, there's all this stuff about evidence-based medicine. We do not have evidence-based health policy.
Right.
And we need to be looking at it much more broadly.
Right. And if somebody wants more information about the Benjamin Rush Institute, what are your thoughts on?
Go to our website. We've got a lot of our debates are actually posted on the website, so we're archiving as much as we can because these things are such unique, wonderful events. So they can go to benjaminrushinstitute.org, and they can also reach us at benjaminrushinstitute@gmail.com. If they're interested, anybody who feels like they have a topic that they would like to share with the medical students, I'd like to hear from them. We screen and have set up a speakers bureau. People who are aware of medical students who might be interested in setting up a chapter. Even we work with existing organizations. You don't have to be official Benjamin Rush Institute chapter, but if you have a student organization that wants to bring in speakers or have debates, then we will co-sponsor and work with them, help them get the funding and find the right people for the topic that they're interested in.
And I've been to some of the debates, and you guys take on all of the hardest topics. You're open to all potential solutions, and you look at all of the problems, all of the possible solutions, and then debate it academically, which I think is the way to go, because things, unfortunately, have degenerated with all that happens politically and what have you, rather than everybody of all different disciplines sitting at the same table and saying, let's talk about our common interests. What are our goals here? What are ways to get to our goals?
But as great as those debates are, the real magic occurs when we have our post-debate dinner and we all sit around the table together, the people who have been having this, you would think, oh, we're just attacking each other. And that's where some really amazing, creative, let's work together conversations go on. Let's learn from each other. Yes, you have a good point. So it's not just what goes on in the debates, but there's a lot of behind-scene conversations that are being stimulated in a very positive direction to try and bring those sides together to make the best solutions. And you've got to have the best people advocating strongly for their point of view and also willing to listen.
Surely, I believe it's important to brainstorm and to come up with as many possible solutions for a problem that you can before, we tend to eliminate things. We say, well, that's not possible, that's not possible, that's not possible. Well, lots of things are possible. So we should look at it, and maybe everyone would commit the resources and the time into making the things that we all believe possible and make them happen.
We're all doctors. We went into this for our patients. We're still in it for our patients. And if we can just keep that central when we have what could become very contentious disagreements about some of the details of how we're going to get there, just always come back. We're really, really in it for the patients.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Haynes. I appreciate you being here with us. And I'm going to give you a fist bump so that we're going to do the responsible thing here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your spending time with us and answering some really good questions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.